It's been years since Myron Gaines rose to infamy as part of the Fresh and Fit podcast, where he and his co-host say the most outrageously misogynistic things and humiliate their female guests. But apparently, he's also written a book, and it's called Why Women Deserve Less. You guys seem to like watching me break down the worst books in existence, so here I am. Let's deconstruct this book. Before I get started, I must address the elephant in the room, which is that Louis Theroux's documentary on the manosphere exposed how a lot of these guys don't actually believe the misogynistic shit they say. They just do what brings them the most money in an attention economy. So let's take this book with a grain of salt, because it really could be more a work of fiction than nonfiction. Now, in the acknowledgements, the book starts with a shout out to his bros. And it's actually bookended with Myron's warm feelings for his bros, because the end also gives a very in-depth shout out to different men in his life. And this is one of the themes that will keep coming up in this book, which is that men like Myron say they want women with a burning fire in their loins, but fail to see that attraction is about more than who you sleep with. Attraction also refers to emotional connection, romantic desire, who you're attracted to that you maybe don't want to sleep with. Like, someone could be only romantically interested in women, but also interested in sleeping with men. Or someone could only want to sleep with men, but also be turned on by women. Or someone could be uninterested in sex at all, but still want a romantic relationship. So often men will put on this aggressively heterosexual performance where they flat out disparage gay men and so forth. But when you actually look at their behavior, they have little to no actual interest in women. What they value is the company of other men, the opinions of other men. Even when they boast about their female conquests, it's usually because they want to impress other men. So it just makes me wonder, when I hear men speaking about women with so much contempt and speaking about men with so much endearment, do they not realize how that sounds? Chapter 1 is literally just a quote from some other pickup artist who claims that women are spoiled rotten because they're offered sex 1,000 times a month. First of all, no, they're not. Where are you getting that from? The average woman is not offered sex 1,000 times a month. But also, it makes it seem like if this were true, it would be such a great thing for women, which really reflects a misunderstanding about what women care about. Maybe men would want 1,000 offers of sex per month, but most women don't want that. They would much rather have respect. A lot of the instances in which they are offered sex are incredibly dehumanizing, where they're literally just seen as an object. And then that's literally the whole chapter. It's just a quote from this pickup artist. Myron couldn't even be bothered to contribute anything to the first chapter of his book, just to quote one of his idolized homies. In chapter 2, he gives 3 anecdotes, one of a boy who gets laughed at by a girl he asks out, one of a man who's ghosted by his date, and one of a bitter old man. And I guess the message we're supposed to internalize as a result of these anecdotes is that women are mean and men are poor little victims. He says men are taught to take women at their word, be nice, and always be a gentleman. Myron, quick question. Why do 1 in 3 women experience intimate partner violence mostly at the hands of male partners? Why do 1 in 5 women experience sexual violence mostly at the hands of males? Why are 90% of murders caused by males? Is it because men are taught to always be a gentleman? The Margaret Atwood quote feels particularly pertinent here. Men are afraid that women will laugh at them. Women are afraid that men will kill them. I want to be clear, if you're hearing this. If you are a man, I am not saying that you are inherently bad or violent. What I'm saying is that male violence against women is a huge problem, in large part because of social norms, not because of biological badness. What I'm saying is that it's ridiculous for people like Myron to act like women are coddled at the hands of men when the reality is very far from it. In chapter 3, he says that there used to be this old contract between men and women, and now there's a new contract. The old contract was that men provided resources and protection, and women provided sex and children, and the new contract is women standing up for themselves, I guess. His source is, trust me bro. I would argue that that was not the old contract, because women weren't even seen as full human beings enough to justify them agreeing to a contract. If they had been, a lot of them would have opted out of that contract. You know, like women in the 1800s not wanting to stay with an abusive husband. But they didn't have that option because they weren't given personhood enough to actually consent to a contract. Myron cites evolutionary psychology, and he commits the naturalistic fallacy that because certain things are only natural, therefore that is the way things must be. He also claims that women will call you creepy if you get them flowers. So, fellas, let me know in the comments, how many times has a woman yelled at you or called call you creepy because you gave her flowers. And he says, all men are Johns, all women are whores. Which kind of on the surface sounds like equal opportunity objectification, where like he kind of sees both sexes as very transactional and objectified, but it's not actually equal, because Johns are historically the ones profiting off of and exploiting sex workers. So what he's really saying with that expression is women are objects that men own and profit off of. In chapter 4, he cites Beyonce's song Irreplaceable while completely missing the point of it. He acts like, the world is filled with all these like man-hating anthems. But the point of that song is a woman stepping away from a man who's mistreated her, who has cheated on her. She's just saying, enough is enough, I'm not going to stick around if you're going to treat me this way. She's not treating him horribly. But for guys like Myron, that's a problem, because they're going to try to mistreat women. And if all women just say to the left, then they have no one left to mistreat. And that's sad. That makes them victims. Myron laments that women no longer need men. This seems to be like a real point of contention for him. And the lovely thing about no longer needing to rely on someone is that then you have the choice if you still want them. In fact, I would argue that's even more beautiful. Let's assume this is like a different context. Let's assume this is like a parent-child dynamic. When they are minors, children need their parents. Then, when they become adults, they no longer need their parents. But if the relationship is strong enough, hopefully they still want to have their parent in their life. It's, in my opinion, a good thing that we no longer need to rely on men, because now we can choose to be interdependent with each other. Taking issue with this reflects, again, this very transactional, dehumanizing outlook that your value and everybody else's is determined by how useful everyone is. It's very utilitarian. Myron blames women's right to vote and the passage of no-fault divorce as reasons for why women no longer need men, which is, I suppose, true. And I think, again, in my opinion, a good thing. Now, Myron doesn't identify as a misogynist. He says he's just spitting facts. This is what happens when you communicate to a group of people that they are more rational than other groups of people. You get men like Byron who think that their opinions and even distortions are facts simply because he holds them. He says that women complain about non-existent things, but interestingly, right after he criticizes women's false oppression, he then starts complaining about misandry. It's always so ironic to me with men like this that they criticize women's victim complex and they dismiss the very serious, life-threatening, documented threats that women face, and then they go straight into complaining about much more minor offenses like women ghosting men or women laughing at men and acting like they're the martyrs for it. You cannot have both. Either you think that complaining about oppression is self-victimizing, or you don't. You can't complain that women are self-victimizing and then go and portray yourself as a victim over much more minor complaints. But in reality, it's usually projection with these people. What they criticize in the other, they are guilty of themselves. And that is usually because they assume everyone else thinks like them. It's in part because of lack of empathy. And it's also a diversion tactic. Me? I'm not pretending to be oppressed, but that woman over there who's asking to not be brutalized by her partner, she's playing in the oppression Olympics. He says that women should be grateful because men gave them rights. Oh my God, is that how it happened? One day men said, you know what, lassies? I think it's time we gave you the right to vote. And then in 1974, they were like, oh my God, did we forget to give you the right to open your own bank account? My bad, girly, here you go. It's not like women had to fight tooth and nail for their rights while men resisted it as long as possible, right? It's not like we're currently seeing a resurgence in men wanting to take away women's rights. It's not like Myron himself has criticized women's right to vote in this very book, right? I'm going to tell you a secret that I discovered while reading this book, which is that Myron Gaines is not very good at math. But first, I gotta be honest, reading books like this one takes a toll, and sometimes I need a palate cleanser. I like to balance out my media consumption with something a lot more positive. I'm so happy that this video is sponsored by Masterclass because their lessons have genuinely changed my life. I'm not exaggerating. When I watch a class, I take it very seriously. I take notes, I grab a drink, I treat it as both self-care and personal development. It's become a very cherished ritual for me. If you're not familiar with them, Masterclass is a streaming service with thousands of lessons from absolute titans in their field. Try to imagine for a second the most influential person in whatever field you're thinking of. Then imagine on what topic do they have the most wisdom to share. That's what these classes are. Some of the lessons that I've taken on creative writing from Masterclass have stuck with me for years and still impact the way that I write to this day. At the turn of the year, I actually watched Ryan Holiday's on ancient wisdom for modern problems, and it very heavily inspired my mindset going into 2026. I actually wrote about it on my Patreon, because in the class itself, he received a hate email, and watching him sort of process through that from the lens of a stoic was so helpful. And not only are the contents of their lessons incredible, the production quality sexuality is also phenomenal. It's so transportive. Like Ryan Holiday's class had very like ancient looking fonts and visuals. I'm totally immersed. I'm in a state of flow, like I'm completely transported to where they're taking me. Masterclass is a service billed annually at $10 per month. They have new classes every month, and you can stream anywhere, anytime at your own pace. If you use my link, you'll get at least 15% off, so click the QR code on screen or the link down below. Thank you so much to Masterclass. So in chapter 5, Myron claims that most women just don't like most men. Remember we were talking about projection earlier? His explanation is women don't want sex with men as much as men want sex with women. Now listen, while women can be just as sexually motivated as men, it's generally true at a population level that women are more sexually selective. Evolutionary psychologists theorize that this is because women are more vulnerable, especially during pregnancy, so they have to choose their partner wisely, or because it benefits us as a species to select the best mate. Social scientists theorize that it's because women internalize a greater degree of shame around sexuality, or because men don't put as much effort into pleasing women, which means a lot of women haven't had the kind of sex worth wanting. Biologists theorize that it's because of testosterone and other hormone differences between men and women, which we know affect libido. But I find it so interesting that Myron conflates liking sex with liking the opposite sex. It reveals a lot more about his worldview. Again, that he thinks liking someone comes down to wanting to sleep with them. Therefore, he can't be a misogynist because he loves sleeping with women. But again, you can't really claim to like women if you speak about them like they're useless, contemptible cattle. And believe it or not, women can like men and even love men, even though they're a little bit more risk averse when it comes to sex. Something else you need to understand about Myron is that he's very bad at math, like really bad. And I say this as someone who, like, math is not my forte, so the fact that I could recognize this is truly saying something. Let me show you this excerpt from his book. He says gay couples have sex about 6.5 times more frequently than lesbians, indicating women's interest in sex at only 15% that of men. Testosterone levels can be used to measure sex drive, putting women's interest in sex at only 6.7% that of men's. Women only consume 1/25 of the amount of porn men. Only 20% of prostitutes are men. Women had zero interest in sex when bluntly propositioned. So what does he do? He averages out these figures. And he says when you average them out, women only have 7.6% of your interest in them. In what universe did Myron learn that you can just average out different variables that are sourced from different populations with serious selection bias that are meant to be proxies for sexual interest but don't actually measure sexual interest directly? That would be like me saying women read around 2 to 3 times more books than men. Girls perform twice as well in English class compared to boys. Women read 90% of romance books, which is the best-selling genre. All of these are proxies for literacy. Therefore, men are only 33% literate compared to women. Do you see how stupid that sounds? In chapter 6, Myron says, men cannot do without sex. Whether it's Stephen Bartlett or Jordan Peterson or Myron Gaines, men in the manosphere love to frame sex as some kind of human right to which they're entitled, as if they're somehow victimized if they don't have this right fulfilled. And listen, it's a pretty universal experience to sometimes want something really badly and not be able to have that thing. We've all experienced it. Yeah, it sucks. It hurts. But that doesn't mean anyone owes us shit, especially when the thing we want so badly hinges on someone else's consent. Myron then claims that women aren't as capable of labor. He cites their inability to carry their economic weight in the society. Myron, bud, you're making up math again. Let's calmly step away from the calculator, okay? Myron, no, put your hands where I can see them. People get hurt when you use the calculator, Myron. Okay, if women aren't carrying their weight, why do women consistently outperform men in academic settings? Why are organizations more profitable when women have positions of leadership in them? Why are 80% of healthcare workers female? Anyone can cherry pick meaningless statistics, like saying that primarily female-led degrees are worthless, or the fact that women tend to vote left more than men. None of these things support the claim that women aren't carrying their weight in society. So then he sort of gives us his thesis, which, you know, it's always great to give your thesis on page 70 or whatever the fuck this is. His thesis is women deserve less because of economic dependence, negotiating in bad faith, and victim status and preferential treatment. Let's start off with economic dependence. He says women take more time off. Let's think about this critically for a second. Let's put on our little thinking caps, right? Critical thinking skills. Why might women take off more time than men? Actually, let's not even theorize because that can be kind kind of tricky sometimes. Let's go straight to the article that Myron himself cited. Past studies on gender differences in sickness absence have mainly focused on factors that may cause women to have more health problems or be more susceptible to illness than men, and health issues related to pregnancy do indeed seem to account for part of the gender gap. Moreover, by virtue of their typical role as primary caregivers, women may be more motivated than men by the concern that a health problem threatens the fulfillment of caregiving duties. Such concerns may also make sickness absence more legitimate for women than men. So one of their hypotheses as part of this article, the one that's relevant to Myron's claim, was that women have more tolerant attitudes towards sickness absence than men, and thus judge sickness absence as reasonable more often than men do. And what do you know? The findings did not support this hypothesis. Overall, women and men judge sickness absence similarly. So the very study that Myron cited to frame women as lazy couldn't find evidence for the hypothesis that women are more lenient with themselves when it comes to taking time off. Other evidence Myron gives that women mooch off the system includes that women choose to breed with deadbeat dads, which is an interesting way to say that men abandon their children and leave their families to fend for themselves. Basically, like Myron is trying to make it sound like men pay taxes to support women, which is weird because Myron believes in traditional gender roles, where men provide and women take care of the home. So wouldn't his ideal scenario be one of female dependence? So he resents when women are independent and don't need men, but he also resents women when they're dependent on men. I don't know, man, kind of sounds like you just hate women. The second reason why he thinks women deserve less is because women negotiate in bad faith. He says that women are less capable of love. Yeah, you heard that right. The guy who thinks women's value boils down to their reproductive organs thinks women love less than him. He says women want attention and resources but don't want to give their end of the bargain, which is sex and kids. And his evidence is the fact that women want attention on dating apps, meaning like they don't follow through as much on dating apps. I have a theory about this actually. I think that the reason a lot of women are on dating apps but don't follow through with them is because attraction for women is often about more than just the physical. Whereas for men, if they see a bunch of photos of a woman and they're attracted to her, they're like, yeah, let's meet up today. But a woman might be, going on the dating apps to see what's out there. Maybe will even match with a few guys she thinks are attractive. But because there isn't that like in-person connection, she might not follow through with it. Myron also says that women don't want to be wives and moms anymore because they divorce their husbands and use daycares. Myron, I'm confused. You say women should want to raise their kids themselves without any help from daycare. But your very last point about why women deserve less was about how women don't pull their weight economically and take more paid time off than men. So in your view, women should be full-time mommies, but also full-time workers? Kind of sounds like you hold women to a superhuman standard that they'll never be able to live to. But yeah, that's point number 2, is that women negotiate in bad faith, from the guy whose citation disproved his own claim. The third reason why women deserve less is because of their victim status and preferential treatment. Myron claims that institutions want women's money because nowadays women hold a lot of privilege. Oh, so now women have a lot of money to spend on the economy. But I thought they weren't holding up their end of the bargain. They weren't contributing to the economy. Which one is it? This man contradicts himself constantly. The only thing consistent in his arguments is the way he'll spin any situation to frame women as terrible. And it's always so interesting to me when guys like this criticize feminism and say women have like victim status, because they're trying to convince men that they are victims. They're trying to convince men that society doesn't think they hold any value, that women have it so easy, that women are coddled and spoiled, but men in exchange have it so hard. The truth is that everyone has it hard as part of being human beings, and sometimes there are institutionally upheld power structures that make life harder for some groups of people in some ways, but at the end of the day, it's not a competition. I just think it's so interesting that men like Myron criticize victim complexes while holding one themselves. In chapter 7, Myron claims that the pursuit of women costs the average man almost $7 million across his life. Myron, we're not doing this again. I can't do bad math again. This quantification of human relationships is so dehumanizing and will never make anyone happy. I do not recommend treating people as commodities if you want to be happy in life. But also this goes back to the victim mindset of like, you're a victim, you don't have $7 million because of women. Are you serious? You're saying men would all be millionaires if they decentered women? It's interesting, he doesn't recommend decentering other men. He's all about prioritizing male company over female company. Because in Myron's eyes, men's value goes beyond just sex. In his eyes, men are actual human beings, in contrast to how he sees women. And he sums up his argument with, you deserve more, women deserve less. And then in chapter 8, he gives guys advice on how to just focus on themselves, which I actually thought a lot of it was fine advice. You know, there's no issue with like decentering women if you find yourself kind of like going head over heels trying to sleep with them. And if it's like costing you a lot and taking up a lot of your life, it's like, great, go do it. Go decenter women then. It's how like sometimes MGTOW guys will be like, I'm going my own way. And it's like, okay, go ahead. But actually, I want to yell at you some more. Like, go your own way. No one's stopping you. No one's stopping you. And then Myron says, all relationships are the responsibility of women. I don't know what this means. He doesn't embellish. I'm not going to speculate. But basically, women deserve nothing, and they are the ones wholly to blame if things go wrong. Again, let's be real here. I think he's just like parroting manosphere talking points. I'm not sure if he even believes any of this shit, but that doesn't change the fact that his readers who like soak up his words are going to believe the stuff he says. What did you think about this book? Honestly, my main takeaway was that Myron Gaines needs to step away from the calculator. Thank you for watching and have a nice one.